case. "More words, words, words," snorted St. George. He stared a moment at Martin and then wandered over to his chair and slumped in it, a defeated combatant from some unnamed war. Martin reached down and opened his attaché case. He was director of the Space Research Laboratory in Megalopolis West, located in the California desert. It was from the enormous complex developed originally for the Venus probe that the first of the super-sophisticated space probe satellites, called the 4S by everyone in the scientific community, had been launched some 9 months before. That one had come back after accumulating a great deal of valuable data on space conditions. The next 5 had gone out and likewise had returned with excellent results. Number 7 was the first in a long line of SSSSs that had never returned. Martin ruffled the sheets of paper in his hand. "The board has spent a good deal of time considering all the alternatives open to us, Mr. Secretary, and I think we've come up with a pretty good solution to the problem." "Good, good," snarled the white-haired old curmudgeon, staring down his nose at Martin. "If you'd like to look at it, sir?" Martin hesitated, and then extended the sheaf of papers across the desk to the Secretary of Space Development. "You know I don't like to waste my time reading words," snapped St. George. "Give me a capsule account of that report in 50 words. The bright black eyes gleamed maliciously. 50 words. Martin leaned back to close his eyes. "Very well, Mr. Secretary. We're planning to send the new Pandora probe, originally intended to explore the Milky Way, with the 2 men aboard to find out what happened to the 12 missing 4S's. 32 words, muttered St. George. Not bad for Washington, D.C. He leaned forward. "Now why in hell couldn't you have told me that in the first place?" "You didn't give me a chance, sir," said Martin, his face flushed. St. George leaned back in his chair and laughed. "I guess I didn't, did I? I suppose you think I come on pretty strong, huh?" "Yes, sir," said Martin, regaining his composure and stuffing the report back in his attaché case. The laughter stopped. The eyes hardened. "All right, Dr. Martin. Now let's get down to brass tacks. All that hardware is out there floating around in space somewhere. $20 million+ worth of it. You didn't send it out there to bring back random information, did you?" Martin flushed. He ran his finger around his collar. "Answer me, Dr. Martin." "Well, sir, come on now. You fellows out there work for me, you know. I've heard rumors. Oh, they're pretty vague ones, of course, but they're fairly accurate usually." St. George leaned forward. "Come on, Horace. Level with me. What is out there?" Martin took a deep breath. He put the attaché case down beside his chair and straightened his tie. He usually worked in a sports shirt at the lab, and he was not comfortable in the confines of a suit and tie. "It was number 11 that sent back the picture, sir. That is, number 11 of the 12 that vanished. It would be number 17 of the lot." St. George's eyes narrowed. "Go on." "We wanted more information before we prepared a report, sir. This only happened 2 days ago, you know. We sent number 12 out last night." I know. There is something out there, Mr. Secretary." St. George slid a little lower in the chair and stared across the desktop at Martin. "You should really have alerted me right away, Dr. Martin, although I can understand your reluctance to do so." "Thank you," Martin said with relief. "It was a most difficult decision to make. But I've got to know the truth if I'm to fend off these damn foggy-bottom rumor-mongers, you know." He smiled crookedly. Martin sat up straighter. He reached out his hand and snapped open the attaché case once again. This time he opened the case on top of the cabinet minister's desk and laid it down flat. Removing the report he had already capsuled, he moved his fingers around on the bottom of the attaché case, twisting an invisible release. The false bottom lifted up. With that he took out another manila envelope. This he opened and, with a glance around the door to be sure no one was watching, withdrew a half-dozen photographs. "Probe number 17 flashed back this picture before it failed to return," Martin said slowly, handing the first of the photographs across the desk to the Secretary of Space Development. Martin watched as St. George squinted at the blow-up of the unidentified object and whistled through his teeth. "What is it?" he asked slowly. "We've put it into the computers, but so far the computers haven't been able to come up with the slightest bit of analysis." "Where is the damn thing?" St. George asked in awe, turning the photograph upside down and sideways, assessing it carefully but with puzzlement. "Where we can isolate the exact spot. It's in our solar system out toward the edge, actually. With all planets changing position so fast, it's hard to pinpoint it off the top of the head, but we know where it is. The astrophysical computers have analyzed it exactly from the positions of the stars and galaxies behind it in the pictures." "You don't need to spoon-feed me with that kind of talk," said St. George testily. "Okay, so we know where it is. Is it moving?" "From the position in these 6 photographs, taken at intervals of 3 minutes each."